Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
All right, I know we have some dance fans here with us. If there's anything we understand in dance, is practice. So I'm going to just assume that that was your practice. And we're going to do it, as many choreographers have said before, one more time. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Fabulous. Thank you so much for having us, Memphis. It's such a delight to be here. My name's Christy Bolingbroke. I'm the Executive Artistic Director for the National Center for Choreography in Akron, Ohio. I'm going to save us all some time and just say NCCAkron for short. And it's such a treat to be here. We have some friends, we have some new friends. I've been very aware of the dance scene in Memphis for some time, so it's always been a goal to get back. But maybe some of you are asking, what does the National Center for Choreography do? Valid question. So we get to work on process over product. We, especially being based in Akron, Ohio, and I was sharing that part of the history, the economic history there, had been in polymer sciences. So I might say to someone in Akron that a choreographer in the studio is the same as a scientist in the lab. It's not always a linear process. We go in with sometimes one or many questions to figure out, and it takes the time to figure that out. And I would imagine that many of us have been to shows, and if you have had a single event and it's 2.5 hours, maybe with an intermission, I can share with you, having gotten the opportunity to work in process, that for every minute you see on stage, it's estimated that's at least 9 hours in the rehearsal studio, in practice over and over again. And artists, beyond that 2.5 hour evening, are artists year-round. So at NCCAkron, we get to work with artists in those in-between times, in the making. We are celebrating our 10th anniversary this year. Oh my God, thank you! We're tween! Yes, and I'm especially proud in these 10 years, we have invested $3 million in artists, getting artists paid for that in-between time, in between the performances. And being a part of that, that is not a matter of running the lottery. It is a lot of administrative choreography in and of itself. Sometimes it's a matter of us finding a dance partner who has a space, but we can raise the money to pay those artists. Sometimes it's a matter of someone who is willing and interested, but they don't know how to connect with artists. Well, we can help with that too. And looking for dance partners that share in our values around being artist-centric, around experimentation, and taking on creative risk. And in getting to do that work is where our Creative Administrative Research Program also came about, or CAR for short. And that is based on the premise that there isn't one way of making dance. So there shouldn't be just one way of doing the business of dance. And artists, in addition to all that practice for what you're going to get to see on stage, they are doing that administrative choreography too. They are considering what is it to either manage a building or to find space. What is it to cultivate and organize community? And at the end of the day, how do you get everyone paid? And so that resulted in this book, Artists on Creative Administration, part of the genesis that we're here today. This includes 30 contributing authors from all across this country who have been trying to do this work. Not just trying, but doing. Trying things out, letting go of those possibilities. And we're going to get to hear from one of the contributing authors today. But since it was published in 2024, what I've been most excited about is that this is an opportunity for us to get to travel and start the conversation, to get to hear regional, local conversations and experiences about what it is to be an artist in this country today. So that said, thank you for being here to be a witness as a part of this, and let's get on with the discussion. I would love to welcome Kevin and Marcellus to join me up here. Thank you. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. You're like, okay. So this is a hometown crowd, so I would presume that many know. Here we have Marcellus, Harper, and Kevin Thomas of Collage Dance. And I wondered if you might take us back a little bit, because to my knowledge, I don't think you're originally from Memphis.
Correct.
So when starting a dance company, why Memphis? Tell us more about the origin story.
Well, we started actually Collage in New York.
Mm-hmm.
So it basically started when actually Dancing of Harlem went on hiatus a little bit before, back in 2004. And we would kind of do like the projects that Dancing of Harlem couldn't do. There was like, they were too big, they weren't happening, but we would do that. And I would get my friends from AOCA and DTH to come and do these shows with us. And then we realized, there are like 1,000,001 companies in New York. If we wanted to be true to our mission, which is, really to get more people who don't really get to be part of this classical dance world, people who look like me, because when I grew up dancing, I was the only one in the company or in the class. So we wanted to do something that would get people more engaged, and we realized that, yes, we need to leave New York. And we had heard about Memphis. We were told that Memphis was, like Atlanta, right? And we got to Memphis and we realized, no, it's not Atlanta.
It's its own thing.
But we realized that we wanted to be in a community that had a very large, percentage of minorities, basically. And to get them into the door of, I call it the classical arts, just dance, because the classical arts, it does do a lot to kids. It's one for passion, for discipline. It leads you to a higher education, I think, I believe we all know that. So we moved to Memphis and we did, I believe, like 2 years due diligence to make sure that what we wanted to do was needed, and we realized that it was. So we opened a school in the basement of a church, First Galilee Church it was, yes, with one child. I had one child. And through word of mouth, through people seeing how their child was changing in front of them, it grew into now us teaching. We see about 1,000 kids a week now. So that's amazing. Those were the beginning days. We went from being a pickup company to getting enough money to have full-time dancers, getting that first grant. Because when we first came here, we were knocking on doors as people not from Memphis. They all shut in our face. No, who are you?
Had to make friends.
So those were the beginning days. That's how it started.
And South Arts also has acknowledged you as a cultural treasure that you are, too. And so now being based in Memphis for 2 decades? I mean, what is time?
We're about to celebrate 17 years.
Okay. All right, I didn't mean to round up.
No.
You earned each and every one of those years.
As Collage told us, so do we. So we don't like to round up.
What has that meant for making art in Memphis? Making that move, migrating outside of New York, and now you've been making the work here. How has that shown up or changed how you approach the art making?
I think it's changed everything. Coming from New York, it's a completely different landscape. It's a completely different culture. The people are different, and so when we moved to Memphis, we had to make a lot of adjustments. But I think it's not adjusting. I think it's one of the things I think is unique about this company is that we really want to be responsive to the communities that we're in, and we want to create art that that's going to serve the community in the best way. So we're not an artist-driven company where it's just one artist's work and their vision, and the community either loves it or they don't. What we're trying to do really is be in service to our community, and so moving to Memphis, it definitely shifted how we created art, the type of art that was important to us, the stories that we wanted to tell. It created a passion within us to want to tell more stories from the American South, realizing that particularly as Black Americans, so much of our history and our lineage comes through the American South.
Yeah.
And so it's important to preserve those stories. It's important to add those stories to the canon. And that's also a way when stories that include people from diverse backgrounds, how you get the audience to be more diverse, how you grow an audience, which from a business standpoint is also important for us.
Yeah.
Yeah, because people get to see themselves represented on stage, and that's the whole, that's how the school grew too.
That's the full circleness. That related follow-up, I'm thinking about the artist workforce. You moved here from New York, and now on average, do you find that you have been training the dancers that now dance inside of collage? Is there still a certain amount of appeal, right, that particularly for Black dancers that want the experience that you've created here, that you have people, flooding Memphis because they want to work with collage? I'm just kind of curious, leaning into Memphis's central location as well, what this has meant for artist mobility.
I think yes and no. I think obviously the majority of the company is from outside of Memphis. So we have dancers from all over, actually the world. We have dancers from all various parts of the United States. And so, yes, that has happened. Even in our staff, we've had people to move, that have worked in the school, that have worked in the company. So yes, but Memphis is a challenging market. It's not without its challenges, particularly for dancers. And I think most people who run a company, and there's several in this room, can attest to that. When you're competing against markets like Chicago or markets like, New York or West Coast, like where there's a more robust dance scene, and also, maybe more vibrant nightlife for young people, that's important for dancers. So what are those things that are important for young people in terms of money to attract them to your city? Memphis has some challenges, just in terms of being competitive with some of those other markets. So we see some challenges there.
I think, the tension between local government and any employers, right? I hear that in a lot of conversations. It's like, okay, how do they appeal to any sector, whether it's tech or the arts? It is the larger quality of life and experience. But it sounds like there's also been a spaciousness here at what you've been able to offer artists, and you are pulling in that workforce.
Yes. Well, Memphis has there's a lot of pros, so we just try to focus on those, and the quality of life, the cost of living, the culture, it's unparalleled. So when you lead with that and you get young people here and they see that and they connect with that, then it's not so hard of a sell.
Yes.
Yeah, because we have dancers that have been with us for 10 and 11 years. So that's, they came here and they just love being here and love the culture. So that's great.
That kind of longevity, when I think about the greater workforce, regardless of field or sector, my dad had a job working for the airlines. It was about that 20 or 30 years, and you got that gold watch. That longevity's never been, I think, the norm in dance, right? Just when I think about our training and how long and how few full-time dance jobs there are. So what a wonderful testament that you can say, we have dancers who've been with us for 10 or 11 years. It's not bragging if it's true. I invite you to reflect on other personal achievements or moments in collage's history that you're particularly proud of. Either it meant something to realize that piece, there was a particularly transformational grant and or real challenges, because there's been some of those. 17 months, 17 years. So yeah, let's celebrate them.
I'm celebrating all of what you just said there. I know for me, one of my big things I love that's going on with us are seeing my young kids grow up and get into university programs, college programs, get into companies. That's incredible. Some of these kids, I started training them when they were 4 and 5. And, they are in these schools, they're dancing at this company. For me, that's just, lets me know that the work that we're doing is working,
Mhm.
and there's a lot more work to do, to make it even better, but to see how we began and what's happening, and then another major thing for me is, some of the work that I have been able to create, like Their Eyes Are Watching God. For me, that was quite an achievement because of just, taking this book and making a ballet out of it, and, sets, props, bringing it on tour. We brought it on tour too, so that was quite incredible. So I was like, wow, look at us.
Yeah, but the time that it takes to realize some of those moments, whether it is a new work, as I've talked about, that ratio of 9 hours to every minute on stage, to being able to follow someone for 17 years as they mature and become an adult, and then that you were a part of their journey.
Yeah.
It's lovely. Do you want to offer anything that you're personally proud of?
Like Kevin said, the community that we built, and the fact that there are so many young people who have that we've been part of them tapping into a passion and seeing dance as part of their life, whether it be recreationally or whether it be professionally. It's been a very, I think, very proud moment for us. Also, for me, building the center that we built during the pandemic, and so we
don't do dance because it's easy.
And it's such a young organization and such a young dance company, to be able to accomplish that, just knowing what it took from us and out of us to make it happen, and with every challenge that could have presented itself, and to see how just how it has inspired the community, how it has provided a safe space for the community, the way it has allowed art to grow, is something that I'm very proud of.
Mm-hmm. Yes, as you should be, for sure. My last question is, what is your definition of success for collage?
Well, for me, as I said, we're a pretty young company, and we've accomplished a lot, for a young company. And so there's so many things that I could say we've checked off in terms of boxes and things that we want to accomplish. We've had a lot of, very, high profile wins that have been celebrated. But like Kevin said, there's still a lot that we want to do. But for me, at the end of the day, success is sustainability. And so, there are so many dance companies where our existence, and collage included, where our existence to me is too vulnerable and too fragile.
And you witnessed that at DTH.
Yes.
And you witnessed it, and a lot of great companies that have done amazing artistic work that have provided tremendous value for the community. And if a benefactor goes away, a company could go away.
Yeah.
If a relationship, changes, a company can go away. If funding priority shifts, a company can close. And so to me, that, I won't be able to, fully rest until, regardless of the relationship, regardless of who the leader is of this organization, regardless of all of these, these type of things, the organization will be here for generations to come. And so how do we get to a place of financial stability? It's not dependent on philanthropy and relationships and whoever's in charge deciding what should be or not.
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing this up, and I might even offer a reframe, because the stability and sustainability can have an inherently fixed idea, as if there's one magic formula as part of that. And so I learned from the creative admin research artist, we had a conversation once, because we were talking about how ephemeral dance is. And yet so many of our activities, like building a building, is so permanent for such an ephemeral art form. So there's inherent tension there. And then the precarity that you talked about financially, I'm reminded from my own dance training, right? We know precarity on a point sometimes, right? We got these skills. So I remain optimistic that if anyone can also find a new and alternate way forward, to better manage that precarity, I think it's dancers.
Absolutely. I just want them not to have to manage it so well.
I know, we're real good at hiding the labor and the effort, so.
It's like, you know,
yeah.
we shouldn't have to be as creative, as resilient, as brilliant to have something sustained and
Not every
exist
time.
that does good work for the community. You know,
Yes.
we should be allowed to fail. We should be allowed to fall, and you know, the organization still should be able to move forward.
Yes. Kevin and Marcellus. Yes. Keep that applause going as we will now welcome Dr. Rico.
I might switch that out.
All right. Can we both switch?
Yeah, we can both switch.
Oh, okay, great. There'll be choreography, of course. Excellent. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah.
And for those that don't know, can you give us a background around Jookin and the Jookin Academy? This is a Memphis art form.
Yes. So we are right under the vision of DJ Spanish Fly. He says, man, I want to like bring hip hop. I got some ideas that I want to do. So he's DJing. He says, I want to start throwing some of my songs in and like, I'm going to rock this party. But this one particular track that was actually out of New York. This track is called Drag Rap. And this track becomes probably the most sampled track in like maybe hip hop history, but definitely Southern hip hop. And he took it, mixed it, changed the BPM, and like it became known as like the song that people did the gangster walk to. And the gangster walk is the folk art that doesn't matter what age, where you at. Like when this song comes on, people get in step from Memphis, right? But over years, that dance will continue to be influenced by the generations to come. Now, although it was originally called the gangster walk, it was also referred to Memphis as Jookin, bucking, chopping. So around 2007, this is about a year or so after myself and a couple other people who were all involved in creating You Dig Jookin, where we had the idea of actually, let's come together and actually make, we was really chip on our shoulder, make the style recognized as more than just like some street stuff, right? So from there, we were already doing that work. We were in the schools here, but we came across a big thing about the word gangster walk, because the schools was like where we were first at. And the mindset wasn't there. So we were aware that there was a style from Chicago called Jookin with Jukin. So we decided to say, we're gonna drop Memphis in front of Jookin and say Memphis Jookin. So now that the world will know that this is specifically talking about not just like a dance style, but a dance style that's derivative of Memphis that's about the generations to come. So when I say Memphis Jookin, we're talking about the gangster walk and its influencing of Memphis dancers who moved from that way.
I mean, probably to surprise no one, you have literally written a juke book. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because having published a book, I have to say, I think it's still easier to make a dance.
Yes. Me and my partner, two people, Daniel Price and Terry Moore, all were a part of the company You Dig, and we was just at a place where we felt that the most important step for us was to like finally actually write it out, because we had many arguments about things because we had to codify our own like style, and one of the styles that we actually, when we wrote the book, and we actually codified it relative to ballet terms, so that was work in itself. But again, that came from like us kind of jumping into like the dance world as a dance company and recognizing like at the time it was kind of clear that the ballet world had the most dance business consistently. Like, so it was like, okay, let's
at least a visible infrastructure.
Yeah. And this was, 2000 and early 2000s. And that's how the book became. And Daniel did a lot of the writing, and like he just spent many times of taking those conversations and writing it out. And then from there have been a few there's a few, I guess you could say, changes that we've made over years to it. But I actually have another book that I have not released yet.
Okay.
Yes, and it is pretty much about the term buck dance. So there's a bigger relationship to the word buck and buck dancing in America that is like deeply rooted, even like prior to a lot of the hip hop dance styles that we know, even predating tap dance. So it's just kind of talking about the experiences I've been able to have, like being a part of other buck dance traditions and the commonality of this universal buckness.
Yes, I think I look forward to this, and it also sounds, as I reflect on our conversation with Collage, like you are also adding to and expanding the dance canon. We were talking a little bit about how you're relensing some of, this is the thing when you are both making and documenting at the same time. What are you learning? How might you talk about your relensing Jookin?
The biggest thing I'm learning from relensing it is definitely still the need to write. I think it goes without saying that like writing, a physical book is still one of the most passed on traditions of like human knowledge. There's a lot of things that we see survive, but books and that knowledge that's written down, we hope that electricity continues on and we'll always have the internet.
But if the cloud goes down, so do those TikTok videos.
And not to take away from oral and lived history, but a lot of those oral and lived histories live today because they're written down. So to me, part of that relensing is first recognizing that, hey, there is a need to write this, but then there's a grounded part where it's like, this is just folk art. Like that's the biggest relens, where this is just Memphis folk art that we're talking about. Yes, it's a street dance. Yes, it has that term too. And yes, we've done work to even be, recognized in spaces for the fine art ability of it. But this is just a folk art. That is what it is.
Well, and emphasis on the folk. I was able to share with you my first visit to Memphis ever. There were Jookin lessons along the Mississippi River. It was the coolest work trip ever. I was the only dance person. I was with a bunch of public service-minded, civics-oriented people, maybe who were not in their bodies, and they gave it a shot. And the fact that we got to do that together, the physical act of it, so exciting and satisfying. They still talk to me about it today, many years later.
And you're speaking of the common tradition of when you're learning something through the world of folk. And there's a place as humans that we decide to perfect something and make it refined. And in that space, we don't also recognize that there is a conscious shift of seeing things this other way. So someone created an environment that you didn't feel like you had to approach this from a learning it through a fine lens. So I just believe what you just shared is that should be the environment from your nervous system, regardless of the skill of what you're learning. Your nervous system should feel like you're just taking a folk art. Even if you're doing it at the highest level of what that art is.
I love that. Of course, as somebody who trained in dance, I see it and I feel it, but I appreciate that you're naming the importance of writing things down, because what we know is that so many other human beings are not that in touch with their bodies or open to just feeling or going with the flow or being open to that. There's a self-consciousness, particularly in this country, in my opinion.
I agree 100%. And it's so interesting because as I get more into spaces that are just art spaces where it's just, I don't want to keep playing on the word folk because it's not always said folk, but it's just
You can relent that
sometimes
later.
it's you invited me to your house, right? And it's just a holiday, and you just wanted me to try this recipe that you made, but you don't see it as art. You don't recognize it is art. And that experience, it doesn't. I don't feel like I have to like it. Or whether you like it or not, just try it. That's a different space than when you tell yourself, I'm presenting this same recipe, but now I'm looking for the acceptance of the world's greatest chef. The recipe didn't change. It didn't.
But you still got to
You
experience
changed
it.
like the expectation and who was receiving it. And that's what we tend to do with like what we live, the art of our lives. And then like we repeat it long enough till we say it's refined, it's a fine art, or it's an expertise. And then from there, we lose sometimes the groundedness of like, you gotta get back to like where it's unrefined. You know? And to me, that's the balance. I mean, but I.
So the why without overworking it. Yeah. I could listen to the gospel of Dr. Rico all day. Please join me in a big round of applause. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you.
Next up, for something a little bit different, we did bring one of our contributing authors in the Artists on Creative Administration, Makini, and have invited them to do an excerpt reading, a recap, and then we'll have a conversation afterwards.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, I was going to come to you. What are you doing?
Oh, we can move over. Nah, I don't like being in the middle.
Okay. I
I'm on
like
this
it.
side.
I like it. Well, I'm going to let you hold this space while you read.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Hi, y'all.
Hey.
God, this is very exciting. I'm grateful for this invitation. I'm just letting percolate like this something, Dr. Rico, that you were talking about the that reframe, that recipe. That's the same recipe in either context, but the context changes everything. And then thinking about, I know they left, but Marcellus is talking about the need to fail alongside you, Christy. You were talking about these superpowers that we have. The we as dancers. I'm a dancer. I'm a movement person. At the in these low rungs among the arts and among everything else. And I'm just thinking about how important it is. What brought me to writing this chapter that I'm going to read a little bit from is how important it is in coming from the Pan-Africanist socialist background that I was raised in. How important it is to understand that we matter because we're here, and that regardless of any kind of exceptionalism that we've attained or that we aspire to, we matter because we're here. And that here-ness needs to be supported. It needs to be cared for. It needs to be nurtured. It needs to be resourced. And so that's how I ended up with Sharing Resource Stories, which is the title of this contribution that I did to Artists on Creative Administration from NCCAkron. Which is, I have so many good things to say about NCCAkron. I need y'all to help me make a choice. Family or intro? Family or intro? Who votes for family? Who votes for intro? Let's go with family. I think. So, what I'll tell you, what I think it's important to say about, before I read a little bit of this family section, is that yes, I grew up within in the United States, in various parts of the United States, but also within a Pan-Africanist and socialist context, which influences a lot of the way that I think about money and relationships. So there's a lot that precedes this, but I'll start with the subchapter called family. I grew up living with both my parents as well as my 4 younger siblings. We lived in various California cities until I was 14, and then in Philadelphia from age 14 forward. Throughout my childhood, before leaving for college when I was 17, there were periods in which various extended family members would live with us as a moment of rehabilitative pause from other life struggles. For many of my years before leaving for college, my parents were students. My mother received her bachelor's degree when I was in the middle of high school and began working as a teacher. And then my father finished his PhD when I started college and began working as a professor. When I started my MFA program, directly after completing my bachelor's program, I started living in the house in West Philadelphia that my family owned at the time via several refinanced mortgages, but from which they had recently moved to be closer to Lincoln University, where my father had just gotten a faculty position. Our oil radiator in the basement had imploded and sent up soot throughout the entire house called a puffback. I moved back into my family's house just as the homeowner's insurance-funded renovation process was beginning with 3 of my college mates. While I was in the MFA program, my parents allowed me to live in the house while overseeing the long, multi-year renovation process and managing the property. In exchange, I didn't have to pay rent until I graduated. When I graduated and did start to pay rent, the rent that I began to pay was slightly below the market rate that was that it was at the current time in my family's West Philadelphia neighborhood. Some years after my 2007 graduation from the MFA program, I began to brainstorm with a couple of my siblings and parents about how we might be able to mortgage a multi-unit house together and rent at least one of the units as income to help with the mortgage. Home ownership and management of rental income is something that I've thought about since winning a Pew Fellowship for $60,000 in 2012 in Philadelphia. It's from the Pew Center for Arts and Heritage. The following year, I was very close to buying a triplex in the King Sessing area of Philadelphia. Less than a week before closing, I pulled out because I didn't have a clear plan for myself about how I could go through with it and still work toward a just housing system, and against being a pawn in the familiar gentrification system of dislocating homeowners in the area. This is the area of Philadelphia that I and my family had lived in since I was 14. But my plan didn't feel rooted enough in community-mindedness to feel like I would really be doing much good with my purchasing decisions, even for myself. My family's West Philadelphia house was so tied up in that debt that in high school I used to worry daily about the bank delivering a foreclosure notice to our doorstep. This may have happened once or twice. I'm still thinking of home ownership and am slowly organizing ideas around contributing to the purchase of a cooperative compound of residencies and art spaces, slowly. So this is just a brief excerpt of some transparency that I have been in the practice of offering in relationship to personal economies, because I think that those things can be so obscured within the field of the arts, especially. And the motor of being funded by trust funds and wealthy partners and other types of inheritances gets really invisibilized. And so this is what I offer as a means to show all the stuff that it takes to create a person going through this field. I'll stop right there and then invite you back up here.
We said a cliffhanger would be good. And of course you had to move.
I
love that choice. Absolutely, for sure. One of the things that I appreciate so much about the work we've gotten to do together is not just the work that you make for the stage, but it is the mental flexibility with how you see the world. No, really, because it's a different way of working. It's something when I think about what we inherited when we entered the dance workforce, and it was a 20th century way of thinking, right? Single choreographer companies who also, were barely stitching it together sometimes, but they were living large. And the cost of living was significantly less than what it would become for us through that.
Yeah.
And so I know that you take the responsibility as a maker that you are also an employer with your cast and collaborators, your approach to transparency with pay equity and some of the processes. The end of each essay includes an admin experiment. So if you want to try some of these things on for yourself, there are some prompts, there are some resources that you can follow along. And long before we asked Makini to write an essay, you've been posting your budgets on your website, right? Like if people really want to know, it's not always a zero-sum game. And so among all of this, and I haven't even gotten through half of the talents and the roles that you play in this field, accounting is one of them. I'm really curious. You talk in your essay about various economic strategies that you've tried on. Since the writing of the essay, what else have you been trying on? What are you thinking about now? Is it still around real estate, or what are you turning your lens towards?
I know, yeah. I'm about to close. Oh, I was actually trying to do this. With the
Okay.
book, but
I was like, I can accept that.
I'm about to close on a house on May 14th.
Oh.
Which is so it's a little bit different from what I imagined would be happening, which the idea of collectively purchasing. When I lived in Philly, we talked about buying a block, and I decided to move. In that pandemic era when so much changed for so many of us, I imagine. And then it's, there's still a somewhat of a communal aspect with this buying process because I'm buying with my co-parent, who we're not together, but we want to be close and also close to our kids. And so there is that communal aspect, but it's a lot different from what I had imagined. Of course, it's the studio process of things change.
The creative process is not linear.
Yeah. But what has felt like a kind of natural evolution, in a way that it feels like I felt this coming for a long time, is something that, you and NCCAkron were central to supporting this. So I have there's a spreadsheet that I started called Designing Your Fees, which is something that I put out into the world, hopefully to help artists working as freelancers and other freelance, independent contractors, self-employed people, to design rates that were premised around their independent and interdependent needs and desires, as opposed to first starting from market realities. And NCCAkron funded some test space for this work, and now we're at the precipice of turning it into an app. There actually is already the kind of prototype app designed, and so we've been using this, and I really do see it as a way to kind of cement that idea that we're here, we're worthy, we deserve to be able to have our needs and our base desires met, regardless of our resumes. And so but obviously it's gonna take a lot more strategy, a lot more community-minded strategy in order to back that up. To a funder, an employer who is saying, well, actually, people that do this job get this much, so it's going to take a lot more strategy, and that's the place that we're at right now, trying to figure out how the math of it, which I love math as well.
The choreography and numbers is really where we found it.
Yeah, right. How the math of it meets the sociology, the interrelationality, how all of those things come together in order to hopefully make lives that are more fulfilling. That feels like it cheapens it. More resourced at very least. Lives that are more resourced. So that's where that we're at a very exciting place in the app development. We did just apply for a big grant that we did not get.
We'll light extra candles.
Yes. yes. But I'm looking forward to continuing to put this out there and hopefully to have it be something that is very useful for people.
Yeah. No, absolutely. We'll be following for sure.
Yeah.
And given your multifaceted perspective of the field, with your own work as well as how you are community minded on top of this. And scarcity mindset is real. I don't think that's just limited to dance and the arts, and it breeds habits and sort of self-limiting ideas. The idea, the notion that every time you make a work, it's a zero-sum game and solving for zero. And what I hear you say also with the app is the complexity to say, like, okay, great, you designed your fee. That doesn't mean because you asked your employer for X amount that they have it, right? So how do you make adjustments, and then that's the real adaptations and the pivots, and I can use dance metaphors all day long. So I'm curious as you're what your, and advice also sounds too pat, but in the absence of a better word, if someone were to say, like, I'm gonna start making dances, what would you say to them? What resources would you share? What perspective? What questions would you encourage them to ask themselves? And this is my last question, so you can finish it any way you want.
I think that a lot of what I have known about this field and a lot of what's afforded me a certain amount of flexibility to move through this field is transforming, disappearing, morphing. And so it's difficult to be able to offer, I know you said it was pat, but to be able to offer advice. I feel like I'm looking for advice. I feel like I'm looking for inspiration. But even deeper than that, I'm looking for bonds. I'm looking for connection. I'm looking for community in order to, I think as Dr. Rico was talking about, to not have that dependency on the on foundations, which which has been a significant part of
Collage brought that up as well.
Well, was it? But I think that it's also, I think this does feel like advice. 9 hours, 1 minute. Of course I started to look, okay, how much is that per hour? But I think it is largely about being slow together. I think it's largely about being slow together, and there's every motivation to go toward those faster velocities everywhere around us. Yeah, everywhere. I felt that. I feel like it's what also buying into that is probably one of the reasons that I was able to move through the field in the way that I was before I kind of stopped. It feels like. But I think that the answer to so many of those ideological, ethical, creative questions is in slow. And slow is expensive, so it brings up a whole lot of other questions. But it does feel like slow is an answer as well.
I love that as an answer. Yes, no, absolutely. And there's, we could talk about that.
Yeah.
We're gonna move there. Please join me in thanking Makini. Always told me he'll be back.
Yes.
And then to wrap us up, I'd love to invite DeMarcus, Akeem Suggs, and Dacquiri Baptiste to join me up here.
Oh man, I thought that was over you.
It's fun for the colors.
Oh yeah. The palette.
There you go. Y'all are fierce leaders here in Memphis. But I have to share with everyone here, I get to work with them all the time because both are on NCCAkron's board of directors. So anytime that we have these larger existential, ecological questions and conversations about dance and the arts in this country, Memphis is always in the room. Thank you. What a gift for me. I'm so grateful. And by being able to come and visit and hear more of the stories today, I was really excited to hear your perspectives. Let us start with the challenges. So one of the things with the CAR program and speaking to funders is in the early days they wanted to know, okay, proof of concept. What have you learned that name any big artist in New York needs to know? And I said, well, I've learned it's a different thing to be an artist outside of New York. There are different opportunities and there are different challenges. So what may work for someone in Miami or Nashville might not work for someone in New York, might not work for someone in Memphis. One of the other essays in the book, I'm vamping so that you have time to think. Raja Feather Kelly wrote, and one of the reviews summed up, and I think quite aptly, that this book talks about how being an artist in this country is really being in a constant state of asking for permission to be an artist in this country. And so I'm curious to hear, what are some of the unique challenges for artists? Dance, if you have that in your wheelhouse, but here in Memphis.
I will start. So I have the privilege of serving as director of the Office of Creative and Cultural Economy for the City of Memphis. And so having conversations with artists is what I get to do. I get to talk to artists, I get to talk to directors of organizations. I get to also hang out with creative entrepreneurs. And I think that what moves me about the city is that there's a little bit of a chip that's like, we don't need your permission from, to do a thing, which leads to a lot of entrepreneurial startups, folks like Dr. Rico, like starting a thing over here and just like it building and growing into a cultural phenomenon that like everybody just, it feels like it resonates, and it's always been here. When you talking about the years, I was like, that was yesterday in the grand scheme of time, but you couldn't tell a Memphian that it just started, in the last 30 years, because it just feels so part of the culture. And so I think that's just there's not necessarily an asking for permission, but then there's also a second guessing that maybe we should look to New York. Maybe Atlanta does have the answer,
It's hard to be an entrepreneur all the time.
Exactly.
And always making it up for the first time.
Yeah. And so I think like some of the challenges, I think that the questions come up when you have the reality of the challenge of access to capital, when you are, competing in a marketplace that is already larger than just the local sphere. I think also, just professional development and training, to be able to sharpen your skills. I think, sometimes that brings up the existential question of like, well, is it just me? Maybe there's other opportunity, and there may be other opportunity elsewhere, but that just kind of resonates.
Challenges you want to add?
Well, challenges to me feel like there's sometimes oversaturation in a sense, because there is so much art and there is so much culture here, and everyone's trying to figure out a place to put it.
Right.
When, to DeMarcus's point, everyone's just like, well, I don't want to put it anywhere. I just want to do my thing. So I'm going to create it for myself, which then offers so many opportunities to engage, which then limits an audience. But are we defined by the audience, or just defined by the art in which we're creating and hope for people to just come along with us? So that's sort of, I feel like there's almost too much offered in a sense.
An embarrassment of riches.
That's exactly right. There's an embarrassment of riches, especially for the population size. But as we all know, Memphis culture is for the world. And so if we get out of the own way of understanding, maybe sometimes it's not about everybody that's right in front of you that's accepting you, that it's past the people that are sitting in front of you, and allow that to be resonate with the success. So.
Following up on that then, what are the unique opportunities to be an artist in Memphis?
It kind of goes back. We can flip the scale, right? And answer the same question, answer the question with the same response, which is successes are, maybe it is because someone has arrived at Hollywood, or a music track was made for an Oscar-winning film twice, within this last, time period, if you will. But sometimes it's just the fact that you have an opportunity to wake up on a Saturday and say, what do I want to do? Maybe I want to go embellish some dance, take a ballet class, right? Or go to the British Museum and sort of learn more about photography. Or I want to do all these things. There's so much art that exists within our city. The successes are seeing people out and about, and sometimes the same people in which you're creating this new community of art lovers that you didn't even know. And we just work in the office with them.
It sounds like the possibility of being is an opportunity here, right? Whereas in other places, there's much more of a hierarchy, a highbrow, a lowbrow. You can't necessarily have a folk art that's rooted in community that people can't remember a time that it wasn't here. Certainly not one that would be as visible. And that is exciting for artists that are looking to make their mark.
I think so.
Yeah, I would also say identifying or centralizing culture as critical infrastructure is an opportunity, I think, for me. In that, like, we have 2 world-class ballet companies. Like, that's a very specific genre. And the fact that Memphis has them. I see Stephen McMahon, the artistic director at Ballet Memphis. Like, folks have built these institutions that are not only placed in community, but also like really connect to community. And we have civic challenges that we experience day in and day out, whether it's public safety, jobs and strong economy, revitalizing our neighborhoods. Like, those are real challenges, but I think the opportunity is that I'm so honored that we get to sit in front row as the mayor initiates these sort of policies towards that, is to really leverage creativity as part of infrastructure, so it's not just the byproduct of being in a good community.
It's almost like it's very Eurocentric thinking, where the arts aren't an extra; they're just to be.
Right. It's a part of the cultural fabric.
It's a part of the culture, because we already know. I think it was said even earlier about just like being a part of the arts. It's naturally going to make you sort of rise up and become a better person in society. And we're not asking you to be the artist, but sometimes maybe just an observer of the art. And then as you participate in that ecosystem, you inherently want to be better for yourself. And being in a city like this that is in the South, and then the South in turn is religious based, right, and faith based. Sometimes people don't think that the faith and the art can operate together, but in actuality it is the same. Right? And so if we can remind ourselves, especially being in a city like this, that those things are woven together to become the thing that's the greater good. The city is trying to do these things where arts are important to weave into our ecosystem to make us better. And then all of a sudden you start hearing less about public safety. You start hearing less about the things that sort of make us shine in the papers for the wrong reason, right? We shift the narrative ourselves. So it's better that way.
Of course, art can shift the narrative.
Yes.
I want to bring in some of our national conversations in, leaning in on being a part of NCCAkron. It is an interesting challenge. Feels very entrepreneurial at times. 10 years in, we don't sell tickets. So how do we define success? How do we know if we're getting anywhere? And I'd be remiss not to acknowledge our mission is to cultivate research and development opportunities in dance, to strengthen the national arts ecosystem, and to advocate for culture and the creative process as essential parts of U.S. culture in this country. Dance and the creative process as U.S. culture. Just that. So how do we know we're getting there? And a big part of it that I drill into all of where our board meetings, or AKA work in process showings, is to talk about this, reaching this moment. We've worked with 800 artists so far from 100 different U.S. cities, and that's really important to me, to not just default to the one way in and out. We're much closer to New York than we are to Memphis by driving, but it's worth the effort to broaden, and that's the strengthening the national arts ecosystem. That's how I know we're getting there. Navigating the larger system as well, and when I first started, I think one of the questions that I had for myself was like, well, which comes first? Do the artists that get the big awards and then NCCAkron works with them, or do we work with them and then they might get the big awards? There is no first. It's super messy. But then when an announcement, the Guggenheim announcement came out a couple weeks ago, and I think there were 11 dance artists that were named, and 5 of them had been NCCAkron alumni. And I was like, okay, it's a sign.
Yeah.
We're getting somewhere. What does a strong arts ecosystem in Memphis look like? And how do you know when progress is being made? Oh, this one's going to go to DeMarcus.
Well, I think it's kind of
His whole last job.
what you were talking about. Is like, I think when you hear more about the creatives being validated, so those like the news is talking about it.
Yeah.
It's in casual conversation. Like, oh, did you check out this art exhibit? Like when you hear more of that than you hear the negative conversation that we've heard around crime and the like. I think that's one marker. I think when artists have more available resources to have a viable career here from cradle to retirement, when we see that dance artists, especially selfishly absorbed in dance, like I want to see a dance artist be able to retire here and be like, yeah, I did my whole career here and I'm
That a dance artist could retire.
Yeah, that part. I think also, I think we know when we're experiencing success when there's a pipeline. There's someone can access a studio or a space within 10 minutes of their house, and like the kid that showed up to a ballet class at 19 and had a dance career out of it. I mean, no air quotes, I did have a career, sorry. For that to be able to happen, and we have quantitative data to demonstrate that availability and access also translates into opportunity and folks being able to leverage that opportunity to make a better life. I think that's what matters to me.
I think success also is measured, if we get into the brass tacks of it all, and the economics, right? When the arts are quantified by the economic rollout from the fact that it is existing in a space, right? So you think about economic impact studies and it feels so like, but that matters to a lot of people, right? And so when that shifts and it's being talked about more in all the spaces about like, because we have these beautiful companies here, because we have these artists here, because people are now driving from near and far to want to come to Memphis to witness these beautiful museums, this beautiful dance, this then in turn starts to pay for itself, right? These art forms. So then to Kevin and Marcellus's point, you're not really having to go to people to ask them for the money to do the thing because it's coming to you because they want to keep pouring into our Shelby County, into Memphis, into being in this beautiful, enriched space, not just because of our geography, but because the culture actually is here and people want it. Yeah.
Please join me in thanking Dacquiri and DeMarcus. And thank you also for providing snacks so we can keep the conversation going. Thank you to the Memphis Listening Lab. And we also have been recording and documenting today's discussion because we publish all of these on our YouTube channel. So if you want to understand more about, well, how are they talking about dance in Chicago or Houston? We got that. We got you. And I hope that we are a part of Memphis's continued growth and progress because we'll get to add this documentation because it's important to tell our stories. Exactly. If you're interested in the book, it is Independent Booksellers Day, so we weren't able to support anyone local because this was their Hanukkah and Christmas and Kwanzaa all wrapped in one. So we do have copies available for sale. Please see my friend and colleague Joshua at the back. They're only $25. If you would like a copy of the book, if you would like to follow NCCAkron's work and stay in touch with us, if you like what you heard and you want to be a part of paying artists, $5, $50, $500, it all goes to paying artists, and Joshua can help you out. Thank you again, Memphis. Have a great rest of the day.